Good evening, dear students. Welcome to the English Canvas. In this session, we'll be exploring one of the most powerful and thought provoking voices in Indian literature, Jayant Parmar. Jayant Parmar is a prominent contemporary Dalit writer in Hindi literature. His writings reflect the socio-economic realities and the struggles of marginalized communities, especially Dalits, in post-independence India. He is not only a poet and short story writer, but also a social commentator who uses literature as a medium of resistance and conscious raising. Jayant Parmar was born in a rural, marginalized community in India. His formative years were shaped by poverty, caste discrimination, and social exclusion. Despite financial and social hardships, he pursued education and developed a keen interest in literature and social issues. His literary sensibilities were influenced by the struggles he witnessed firsthand, Dalit activism, and modern Hindi literary movements. Parmar is closely associated with Dalit literary circles and often participates in seminars, discussions, and movements that aim to bring Dalit voices to the forefront of Indian literature. So, let's talk about his notable work. Jayant Parmar has contributed to Hindi literature mainly through poetry and short stories. His works often depict the harsh realities of caste based discrimination and the resilience of the oppressed. His notable works consist a collection of poems. His poems reflect pain, resistance, identity, and hope. They often draw from personal experience as well as a collective Dalit suffering. His poetry has a few themes like oppression, social injustice, dignity, and self-assertion. His notable works consist short stories as well. His narrative explored the everyday life of Dalits, including struggles for survival, social mobility, and identity assertion. His short stories are realistic, sometimes stark, but always with underlying themes of resilience. His essays and articles uh, Actually, Parmar writes critical essays on caste, society, and literature, linking personal narrative to larger socio-political realities. So, his works are considered important in the Dalit literary movement and are often discussed alongside other Dalit writers such as Om Prakash Valmiki, Sharan Kumar Limbale, and P. Sivakami. So, now we'll discuss about his literary style. Jayant Parmar's literary style is distinctive and authentic, marked by some of the characteristics. The first is realism. So he portrays life as it is without romanticizing or embellishing the struggles of Dalits. He uses the direct, simple, yet powerful language, symbolism, and metaphor. Though his style is simple, he often employs symbols to reflect deeper social realities. Everyday objects, rituals, and events become metaphors for oppression and hope. His work has an autobiographical element. Many of his work draw on personal experience and community narrative, so this give authenticity and emotional depth to his writings. His work has an activist tone. His writing is not only literary but also a form of social protest. He critiques social hierarchies, caste, oppression, and patriarchal norms. His language is grounded in Hindi, accessible yet lyrical, and he often blends local dialects and idioms to reflect the voice of community. Right? Now we'll talk about the themes in his poetry and his short stories. So themes in Jayant Parmar's writing is very unique. It is based on caste and social discrimination. This is the central theme which explores the systematic exclusion of Dalits, identity and self-assertion. His writings is it struggles to claim dignity and humanity in a hierarchical society. There's resistance and hope even amidst oppression. His work often suggests resilience and empowerment. There is human suffering and empathy. So his work portrays both individual and collective experience of pain. It talks about rural life and marginalization, depiction of villages and small towns as spaces of both struggle and solidarity. So his work is very significant, and it gives a actually Jayant Parmar contributes his work to Dalit literature. Dalit contribute to the Dalit literature movement. Parmar's writing strength the Dalit consciousness and challenge dominant literary paradigms. His works are very authentic. His works are valued for their truthful portrayal of marginalized lives. His work is inspiration for activism. Through literature, Jayant Parmar inspires awareness, empathy, and social change. His work is very important on educational level as well. His works are often included in curricula on modern Hindi literature and Dalit studies. So Jayant Parmar is a crucial voice in contemporary Hindi literature. His literary works are not just art, they are instruments of social consciousness. By combining personal experience with the social commentary, he provides a mirror to society. He exposed injustice injustice he exposes injustice while celebrating human resilience. Understanding Parmar's literature is essential for anyone studying Dalit literature, social equity in India, or modern Hindi writing. So, understanding Parmar's literature is must for them, right? So, so this is all about Jayant Parmar's life, his literary works, his major works, notable works, and his literary style. Right now, we will go to the poem which is in our syllabus, The Last Will of the Dalit Poet. So this is the poem which is in our syllabus. We need to we need to understand it. We will read the poem line by line, and will understand the deep meaning behind these lines. So Jayant Parmar's poem, The Last Will of the Dalit Poet, is a powerful reflection on the life, on identity, and on struggles of a Dalit poet. Unlike conventional poetry that relies heavily on symbols or literary embellishments, Parmar's work is stark, direct, and rooted in lived experience. The poem, The Last Will of the Dalit Poet, the poem explores themes of marginalization, suffering, and resilience, and self assertion, right? It captures the Dalit poet's dual existence, which is burdened by societal oppression yet proudly embraced his identity, right? So, the imagery of blood, exile, and brokenness portrays the pain and invisibility of Dalits, while reference to art and rebellion and ancestral heritage reflect hope, resilience, and the immortality of creative expression. So, this poem is considered a seminal example of contemporary Dalit literature because it merges personal experience, social critique, and literary artistry, all while rejecting conventional aesthetic forms that often obscure the reality of oppression. So let's read the poem line by line. A Dalit poet leaves several things behind. So the poem. So the poem opens with a declaration of what the Dalit poet leaves behind, signaling that his poetry and life are a testament to his existence and struggles. It sets the tone for a reflective and mournful will. A paper dripping wet with blood. So blood symbolizes suffering. Blood symbolizes suffering, pain, and sacrifice. The poet's words are inseparable from his personal and communal suffering, highlighting the violence and oppression which is experienced by Dalits. A black sun on the night's head, on the night's head. So the black sun represents despair, darkness, and overshadowing presence of caste oppression, right? And it suggests that the Dalits live under the shadow of systematic injustice. On the night's head, it means the Dalits live under the shadow of systematic justice. A river of blood, a lantern of his ancestors. So the river of blood extends the imagery of sacrifice and collective suffering of Dalit communities. The lantern of his ancestors, it suggests guidance and heritage even amidst suffering. The poet the poet carries forward the memory and wisdom of his forebears. He never assaults with you with he never assaults you with symbols, metaphors, or personalities. So Parmar contrasts his poetry with conventional literary techniques. The poet's work is direct and raw, reflecting reality rather than ornate or metaphorical representations. A heavy burden on a donkey's back, he is himself a wounded shadow. So the poet Jayant Parmar equates his existence to a burdened, suffering entity, highlighting marginalization and invisibility. The image evokes relentless labor, hardship, and the societal weight which is placed on Dalits. He has no existence. There is little difference between him and a broken cup. So the poet's identity is negated by society. He is seen as disposable or insignificant. He has no existence, right? So he has no existence. So his identity, the poet's identity, is neglected by the society. He is seen disposable or insignificant. So this is there is little difference between him and a broken cup. There's a little difference between him and a broken cup. It means he is seen as disposable or significant. The broken cup the broken cup metaphor evokes fragility, invisibility, and social discard, right? The next lines are: he who makes images with cow dung. He who makes images with cow dung has at least the sense to know that in the hourglass, in the smell of exiled earth, in the sunflower of rebellions, in the spare of pen and ink, art lives forever. So here in this stanza, in these lines, Jayant Parmar juxtaposes menial labor, which is cow dung, with the enduring power of art. The hourglass, yes, the hourglass, and the smell of exiled earth. These two phrases signify temporality and displacement, while the sunflower of rebellions and the spare of the pen, these two convey the resistance and creating power. So ये दो phrases, 1 2, इनका 3 and 4. So the phrases 1 and 2 is there is a comparison with this phrase number 3 and 4. The hourglass and the smell of exiled earth signifies temporary and displacement, while the the sunflowers of rebellions and the spear of pen convey resistance and creative power, right? So despite marginalization, the Dalit poet recognizes the art and literature immortalized. Arts live forever. It means the Dalit poet recognizes that art and literature immortalize the truth and struggle which transcend caste oppression. Right? Now, the next lines are, but now he's looking for his existence, he's looking for himself. These three lines in which the poet asserts a search for self identity and recognition. This reflects the Dalit literary movement's emphasis on self assertion and reclaiming dignity, right? So, he's proud to call himself a Dalit poet. This is very important. You can add these phrases in your answers as well, right? So the poem concludes with a powerful affirmation. Despite suffering and marginalization, the poet embraces his identity with pride. This final declaration transforms oppression into dignity, highlighting resilience, self awareness, and the assertion of Dalit voice in literature. So here the poem ends. The poem ends here. So the poem captures the pain, invisibility, and societal burden of Dalits. This poem celebrates art as a tool of rebellion and immortality, offering a vision of resilience and pride. Jayant Parmar's style is direct, unornamented, and yet deeply symbolic, making the Dalit experience visible to the reader. Right? अब ये पोएम भी हो गई है. सो आर नेक्स्ट टॉपिक फॉर दिस क्लास इज आंसर राइटिंग स्ट्रैटेजी. ये टॉपिक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होता है क्योंकि यहाँ पर हम वो डिस्कस करते हैं जो हमने पिछला पढ़ा होता है. मतलब जो भी हमने पढ़ा है उसको कैसे यूज़ करके एक अच्छा और इफ़ेक्टिव आंसर लिखा जाए, हम यहाँ पर डिस्कस करेंगे. सो द फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज, वाई डज जयंत परमार से that Dalit poets do not attack with metaphors and symbols. ये डबल इन्वर्टेड होना चाहिए, कोटेड होना चाहिए मतलब. सो सबसे पहले यू नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड द क्वेश्चन कि क्वेश्चन में कह क्या रहे हैं, पूछ क्या रहे हैं. वाई डज जयंत परमा सेज दैट Dalit poets do not attack with metaphors and symbols? It means Dalit poets do not rely on metaphors and symbols. It means they write their things, their thoughts in a very simple and a very unornated manner, right? So you need to explain why this is the case according to Parmar. So you need to focus on the style and purpose of Dalit poetry in reflecting lived experience and social reality. So यहाँ मैं कुछ की पॉइंट्स लिख रही हूँ जो कि आपको अपने आंसर में ऐड करने हैं, क्योंकि क्वेश्चन में पूछा गया है ना. मतलब ये बताया गया है कि जयंत परमार ने ऐसा क्यों कहा कि दलित पोइट्स जो है वो मेटाफोर और सिंबल्स से अटैक नहीं करते. क्यों? क्योंकि दलित पोइट्स जो होते हैं, दलित ऑथर्स जो होते हैं, वो सिंप्लिसिटी में, विथ सिंप्लिसिटी एंड विथ द लाइव एक्सपीरियंस अपनी बातों को कहते हैं. दिस इज़ द एक्चुअल ऑर्नामेंट ऑफ अ दलित लिटरेचर, कि वहाँ पर कुछ भी सजा हुआ नहीं है. देर इज़ नथिंग टू बी डेकोरेटेड और ऑर्नेटेड. जो भी है बहुत सिंपल है, लेकिन वो बहुत ही सच है, वो बहुत ही रियल है, राइट. सो द फर्स्ट की पॉइंट इज directness of expression. So Dalit poets write from personal and collective experiences of suffering and oppression, right? Metaphors or symbols की अगर हम बात करें, so it could obscure the harsh realities they wanted to convey. So Jayant Parmar's poetry is raw, immediate and unembellished, right? सो वो काफ़ी उसमें डायरेक्टनेस है ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन की. तो इसलिए मेटाफर्स और सिंबल्स की इतनी खास ज़रूरत है नहीं, क्योंकि जो हमारी जो दलित पोएट्स हैं, इनकी जो पोइट्री है ये काफ़ी रॉ है, इमीडिएट और अनएम्बलिश्ड है. सेकेंड इज authenticity over ornamentation. Parmar emphasizes truthful representation of marginalized lives. It's a symbolism or heavy literary devices can dilute authenticity. For instance, a paper dripping with blood. There is a line in the poem. A paper, this one, a paper dripping wet with blood. So this line is more direct and impactful than using a metaphor for suffering. So this is better to use this line as it is. जो भी pain है उसको as it is दिखा दिया गया. So there is no need for the ornamentation or using any metaphor or imagery or simile, right? So there's an authenticity over there's authenticity over the ornamentation, right? Third is focus on lived experience. So Dalit poetry is grounded in real life experience of caste discrimination, labor, and social invisibility. The poet is a witness, the poet is a survivor and the chronicler. So metaphorical attack might make the experience abstract rather than visceral, right? Fourth is political and social purpose. So Dalit poetry is a protest literature. It seeks to raise consciousness and challenge hierarchies. Directness ensures the message of oppression and resistance reaches the audience without ambiguity, right? Fifth point is Parmar's on assertion. So in the last will of death, the last will of the Dalit poet, he writes, he never assaults you with symbols, and there's a line. Yes, there's a line. He never assaults you with symbols, metaphors, or personalities. So this line reflects deliberate stylistic choice to let the lived reality itself communicate the pain, struggle, and identity of the Dalit poet. Right? So these are the key points which you can use to write a good answer. अब आपको ये सारे पॉइंट्स को यूज़ करके अपना आंसर कंस्ट्रक्ट करना है. सबसे पहले आपको इंट्रोडक्शन लिखना है. इन द इंट्रोडक्शन यू नीड टू मेंशन दैट Dalit poetry is a reflection of light experience and social reality. You need to state that Jayant Parmar deliberately avoids metaphors and symbols. मेन जो बॉडी पार्ट होगा आपका उसमें आपको एक्सप्लेन करना है द डायरेक्टनेस ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन, ऑथेंटिसिटी ओवर ऑर्नामेंटेशन एंड linked with the lived experience. You need to explain the political and social purpose and quote Parmar's line to support points, जो कि मैंने आपको यहाँ पर बताई ना, ये वाली लाइन आप इसको इन 3 लाइन्स को 4 लाइन्स को आप अपने इस आंसर में कोट कर सकते हो. और उसके बाद यू नीड टू कंक्लूड योर आंसर बाय राइटिंग Dalit poets avoidance of metaphors and symbols is a conscious choice to ensure clarity, authenticity, and social impact. It reflects the urgent need to communicate oppression, resistance, and identity without delusion. So Jayant Parmar asserts that Dalit poets do not assault readers with metaphors or symbols because their poetry emerges from a direct engagement with life experience and social reality. राइट तो आप ऐसे करके पूरा लिख देंगे आंसर, और एक बहुत अच्छा आंसर आप इन पॉइंट्स को ऐड करके लिख सकते हैं. अब चलिए चलते हैं क्वेश्चन नंबर 2 पर. The last will of a Dalit poet appears to be a vestigial symbol of staggering, painful effort to find some sense in the world of nonsense. So you need to examine this statement. So देखिए यहाँ पर कुछ क्वेश्चन को पहले समझना पड़ेगा. उसके लिए आपको कुछ कीवर्ड्स देखने पड़ेंगे. पहला कीवर्ड ये है, हम इसको हाईलाइट करते हैं. ऐसे करते हैं. So this is the keywords. These are the keywords we need to give some attention to them. सबसे पहला है vestigial symbols, staggering painful efforts. ठीक है, ये हो गया. And find some sense in the world of nonsense. So यहाँ पर ये 3 keywords को हमें आइडेंटिफाई करना पड़ेगा. उसके बाद अब ये क्यों हमने आइडेंटिफाई किया. वेस्टिजियल सिंबल, ये एक दिस इज काइंड ऑफ रेमिनेंट और ट्रेस ऑफ समथिंग दैट वंस वाज सिग्निफिकेंट. स्टैगरिंग पेनफुल एफर्ट, दिस इज अ काइंड ऑफ स्ट्रगल, हार्डशिप एंड सफरिंग. फाइंड सम सेंस in the world of nonsense, it is an attempt to make meaning in a chaotic and oppressive society. So focus कहाँ करना है. You need to explain, मतलब you need to write a good answer. You need to explain how the poem reflects the Dalit poet's struggle to assert identity and find meaning in an unjust world. राइट. अब कुछ की पॉइंट्स में लिख रही हूँ जिसको आपको बहुत ध्यान से समझना है, क्योंकि वही आपको एक अच्छा आंसर लिखने में हेल्प करेंगे. So the first key point is the poem as a vestigial symbol. So the poem is a remnant of the poet's lived experience. It carries traces of personal and collective suffering, oppression and resistance. Vestigial highlights survival despite marginalization, a residue of struggle in a memory and art. Second is painful effort to find meaning. Right. So Dalit poet negotiates a society that denies his existence and humanity. जैसे blood, black sun, broken cup, these are the symbols of suffering and oppression. So writing becomes an act of resistance and search of selfhood, an effort to make sense of injustice. Right. अब third point है world of nonsense. So society structured on caste hierarchies and systematic exclusion is inherently illogical and unjust. Dalit poets confront a reality where dignity is denied, yet they seek expression, identity and social justice through art. Right. Fourth is poetic devices reflecting the struggle. Sorry for this handwriting. So there is a direct imagery. जैसे कि इस पोयम एक लाइन है, पेपर ड्रिपिंग विद ब्लड एंड हेवी बर्डन ऑन डंकीज बैक. सो देयर इज रियलिज्म एंड पर्सनल टेस्टिमनी विच ट्रांसफॉर्म पर्सनल सफरिंग इनटू अ यूनिवर्सल क्राई फॉर रिकॉग्निशन एंड मीनिंग. So at last you need to conclude your answer, which is a link to the meaning. So you can use these points and conclude your answer. The poem is a testament to resilience and poets attempt to carve meaning in a dehumanizing world. Art becomes a permanent vessel for memory, identity and protest, and even existence is negated. So when you are writing the answer, you need to give an introduction on this term, vestigial symbol. So you need to define this term in the context of poem. State that the poem represents a Dalit poet's struggle to find meaning in a senseless, oppressive world. In the main part of the answer, you have to discuss pain, suffering and oppression depicted in the poem. You need to explain how writing and art serve as resistance. You can use examples from the poem like black sun, blood, lantern of ancestors. ये सब है पोएम में. ये blood, black sun, knight's head, lantern of his ancestors, broken cup, ये broken cup, ये आप यूज़ कर सकते हो. And highlight the poet's quest for selfhood selfhood and existence. So you need to conclude your answer, you need to summarize that the poem is a symbol of resilience and the search for meaning. So emphasize the role of Dalit poetry in transforming suffering into enduring art and identity, right? अब चलते हैं थर्ड क्वेश्चन, जो कि लास्ट क्वेश्चन है इस पोएम का. इसके बाद ये वाला टॉपिक ख़त्म हो जाएगा. सो क्वेश्चन इज critically explain the following lines with reference to context. तो ये पोएम का एक पार्ट है. अ दलित पोएट leaves several things behind: a paper dripping wet with blood, black sun on night's head, a river of blood, a lantern of his ancestors. He never assaults you with symbol, metaphors, and personalities. So first of all, you need to understand the question. So सबसे पहले कॉन्टेक्चुअलाइजिंग अंडरस्टैंडिंग इज़ रिक्वायर्ड, क्योंकि देखिए पेपर में तो हमें नहीं पता होगा, यहाँ कहीं मेंशन नहीं है कि ये लाइंस जो है वो कहाँ से एक्सट्रैक्टेड हैं. सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल यू नीड टू आइडेंटिफाई द पोएम, और आइडेंटिफाई द पोएम एज वेल एज द पोएट. तो आपको वो पहले पूरा बताना होगा. उसके बाद यू नीड टू एक्सप्लेन द इमेजरी of the poem and meaning and literary choices of the poem. You should focus on Dalit identity, suffering and literary style, right? So चलिए मैं आपको कुछ की पॉइंट्स बताती हूँ जो आप इसके लिए लिखेंगे, इस आंसर के लिए, जो आपको एक अच्छा आंसर लिखने में हेल्प करेगा. सबसे पहले जो कुछ एक सेकेंड, यस, मतलब की पॉइंट्स नहीं है, की लाइन्स है. जैसे कि ये अ दलित पोएट लिव्स several things behind. So these two lines, it sets the tone of a will or testament, emphasizing the poet's desire to leave a legacy. And these two lines highlight the conscious effort to communicate experience of oppression and resistance. The next line, paper dripping wet with blood, so it symbolizes sacrifice, suffering and struggle. And this line suggests that the poet's words are inseparable from pain and lived experience. Black sun on night's head. Black sun reflects despair, darkness, and hopelessness caused by caste oppression, and it conveys existential gloom and societal marginalization. A river of blood, a lantern of its ancestors. So, the river of blood amplifies collective suffering and historical oppression. The lantern of his ancestors symbolizes the ancestral guidance and memory or and heritage, offering light in darkness. He never assaults you with symbols, metaphors, or personalities. So these lines reflect the Parmar's direct, embellished literary style. Dalit poetry aims to represent reality authentically without abstract literary device. The poet relies on raw, visceral imagery to communicate oppression. सो अब कुछ क्रिटिकल एनालाइज करने के लिए आपको कुछ पॉइंट्स को आपको समझना पड़ेगा. जैसे सबसे पहले जो की पॉइंट है वो है themes of suffering and marginalization. So there's an imagery of blood, darkness, and burdens that reflect the physical, social, and emotional pain of Dalits. The poet embodies the community struggle, making literature a witness to injustice, right? Second key point is role of heritage and resistance. So there's an ancestral lantern that signifies continuity, guidance, and collective memory. Even amidst marginalization, the poet draws strength from heritage and identity, right? Third point is rejection of conventional literary devices. So Parmar avoids metaphors and symbols to maintain clarity, authenticity, and immediacy. So focus on direct communication makes the poem more impactful and social resonant, right? Fourth is Dalit identity and assertion. So the lines assert that the poet's existence is defined by struggle and resilience, not literary ornamentation. So the poetry becomes a tool for reclaiming visibility, dignity, and social voice. So by using these points, you can construct your answer. In introduction, you need to mention the context of the lines in the last fill of the Dalit poet. State these all lines reflect suffering, resilience, and literary style. In the main part, you need to explain imagery line by line, like blood, black sun, river, and lanterns. So you need to explain the imagery. After that, you should discuss Parmar's rejection of metaphors and symbols. इसको भी हम discuss कर चुके हैं. And by using all these points, you can conclude your answer. Parmar's lines highlight the directness, authenticity, and social purpose of Dalit poetry. They underscore the poet's struggle to have a legacy and assert identity amidst oppression. Right? So this is all about today's class. In today's lecture, we explored Jayant Parmar's life, his literary style, and his poem, The Last Will of a Dalit Poet. Right? We saw how Parmar's writing is rooted in lived experience, suffering, and the quest for identity, reflecting the realities of marginalized communities. His poetry rejects ornamental literary devices like metaphors and symbols, opting instead of for direct visceral imagery that communicates pain, resilience, and resistance. Lines such as a paper dripping wet with blood, right? This line, and a lantern of his ancestors illustrate the collective struggle, the ancestral guidance, and the assertion of Dalit identity. Through this poem, Parmar transforms personal and social suffering into art that is enduring, socially conscious, and empowering, highlighting the role of Dalit literature in reclaiming dignity and visibility. So, understanding Parmar's work is crucial for appreciating how Dalit poetry merges authenticity, protest, and artistic expression, making it both a testimony and a legacy for future generation. Right? So, at last, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. और नेक्स्ट क्लास में हम एक नए टॉपिक के साथ मिलेंगे. तब तक के लिए इसको रिवाइज करते रहिए. एंड इफ़ यू हैव एनी क्वेरी, तो कमेंट सेक्शन इज़ ऑलवेज अवेलेबल फॉर यू for your any kind of query. I'll definitely try my best to give you a satisfied answer. And if you found this lecture helpful and insightful, so please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends and classmates, and subscribe to the channel so that you never miss an update. Thank you so much.